Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the first direct sequel in the 3D Mario series, and it also happens to be my favorite Mario game. It expands on ideas pioneered by Mario Galaxy and simultaneously acts as a celebration of the entire franchise. It is probably the game I have replayed from start to finish the most in my life, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I have a deep nostalgia for Galaxy 2 that few other games come close to matching, to the point that every single moment in the game elicits the exact same emotions from me as my first playthrough did. I remember the intense excitement I felt first stepping foot on Sky Station Galaxy. I remember the intrigue I felt unlocking the Wild Glide Galaxy, wondering what could possibly await me in this lush rainforest. I remember the unexpected sadness I felt entering World 3, spending a few moments just soaking in the gorgeous world theme. I remember the motivating sense of momentum I felt progressing through World 6's stages. I remember the weird mixture of confidence and uncertainty I felt rolling up to the final Bowser fight. And I remember the euphoria I felt when the credits finally rolled. The point is, my connection to this game transcends an appreciation of its mechanics and level design. It's a connection that is deeply personal. It was one of those games that went on to define my gaming tastes for many years. So why then have I had such difficulty writing about it? Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the first direct sequel in the 3D Mario series, and it shows. It rarely tries to expand upon the foundation set by the original, and is content just living in the shadow of that game. The Mario series has always been about breaking new ground, defining the conventions of side-scrolling platform games, laying the groundwork for how a platformer should play in 3 dimensions, taking a vacation on a tropical island, and traveling to outer space. Breaking that tradition in favor of revisiting an old setting and gameplay mechanics makes Galaxy 2 feel underwhelming by comparison. There's no bold new idea that justifies a full-fledged sequel, but rather some refinements that aim to correct the original shortcomings. It's been difficult for me to find anything valuable to say about this game, because it feels like the game itself doesn't have anything to say. Days have passed me by where I accomplished nothing more than staring at a blank Google Doc, praying for words to appear on the page. I just couldn't understand why the idea of writing about one of my favorite games of all time ignited such little passion within me. After a bit of introspection, I think I'm finally ready to come to terms with my real opinion on Galaxy 2. I don't quite know what it'll look like yet, but I hope you're ready to join me. Without further ado, this is Super Mario Galaxy 2. The opening of Super Mario Galaxy 2 does a good job setting the tone for the rest of the game. It subtly showcases the evolution of the Mario series through gameplay by having the player transition from platforming in a 2D plane to walking in the fully 3D Mushroom Kingdom. This is the first of many nods to the series' past throughout the game, but it also serves as a great tutorial for new players. Where Galaxy 1 is serious and cinematic, Galaxy 2 is lighthearted and charming. Bowser makes sure to crack plenty of jokes before taking Princess Peach and venturing off into the cosmos. There isn't really a grand setup to speak of, it just kinda plays out like a typical Mario game with a few little flourishes. The upside to this approach is that the opening is finished in a few moments, and you're shot right into the first level of the game, which is where the magic of this game makes itself apparent. The opening of Super Mario Galaxy 2 does a good job setting the tone for the rest of the game. It's short, bare bones, and doesn't even try to come up with a unique premise. It takes plot points from the first game when necessary, otherwise defaulting to the typical Mario tropes that have been done to death. This opening feels rather uninspired, especially when compared to the opening of the first game. It does the absolute bare minimum, which is establish the circumstances that lead to the gameplay. It has no interest in going any further. It feels like the game acknowledges that it doesn't have much going for it plot-wise, as it wastes no time shooting you straight into the first level of the game. Galaxy 1's opening sequence gives the player time to breathe after the excitement that took place the scene before, and it does a phenomenal job of acquainting the player to the game's atmosphere. As such, it is one of the most memorable parts in the entire Mario franchise for me, and it works wonders in the greater context of that game and its story. It's as if Galaxy 2 spits in the face of that idea, and it's disappointing. I'm not proposing a rehash of the same story beats from the first game, but rather some new scenario that justifies a revisit to the cosmos we just explored. There's no denying that the approach that 2 takes has its own merits, but I prefer the slower paced structure of the first game. The levels in Galaxy 2 are a constant barrage of new mechanic after new mechanic, new set piece after new set piece, new idea after new idea. Part of what makes this possible is the addition of Yoshi, and all of the new power-ups he brings along with him. Unlike in Sunshine, Yoshi is a clear upgrade to Mario's moveset in Galaxy 2. He runs faster, he can flutter jump, and his tongue has a variety of applications. His power-ups are all explored fully throughout the course of the game, and they're a ton of fun to use. The pepper allows him to run at insane speeds and even run across bodies of water. The blimp fruit fills him with air, which he uses to slowly propel himself upward for a few seconds. The bulb berry reveals hidden platforms that can only be stood on with the power-up active, and its use is also limited to just a couple of seconds. Mario himself also nets some new power-ups, and I'm a lot less conflicted about them than I am the ones in the first game. The drill allows you to dig through a planet or platform to the other side of it. It's the least compelling of the 3 new power-ups, since the game doesn't really evolve the ways it tests you on it, but it's still a neat concept and it's decently fun to use. The rock mushroom turns Mario into a giant boulder and grants him a burst of speed, which allows you to pummel through hordes of enemies and destroy particularly sturdy structures. This power-up is explored thoroughly throughout the course of the game, and climaxes in World 6, where you have to platform through a level as the boulder. More on that later. Finally, the Cloud Flower grants Mario a floatier jump, along with the ability to create 3 platforms wherever you choose. The potential use cases for this power-up are limitless, and a Mario power-up based on resource use rather than a timer or damage is a nice change of pace. It's incredibly rewarding to bank some extra clouds throughout the course of a level to save them for a section that would otherwise be much more difficult, and for that, it's my favorite power-up in the game. Now that we've gone over the new mechanisms by which you engage with the levels, let's discuss the levels themselves. Galaxy 2 includes a mix of new level ideas, along with revisitations of concepts found in the previous game. For the most part, these levels boast completely unique mechanics and gimmicks, which makes each stage feel memorable and fun to play through. One of my favorites is the Hightail Falls Galaxy, where you are first introduced to the hot pepper. It effectively teaches you how it works on this first platform, and wastes no time upping the difficulty. This is actually one of the trickier levels in the game, since it requires a comparatively high amount of precision than the other stages. It may be incredibly linear, but it's a level I always look forward to when replaying this game because of the thrilling challenge it offers. Puzzle Plank Galaxy has quite a unique aesthetic going for it, with its platforms consisting of cut wooden planks and blocks that need to be ground pounded. I appreciate that the developers felt the need to contextualize the falling platforms in this way, because most Mario games are content to just simply have them descend into the abyss. But I've gotta be honest, the main reason I love this one so much is that absolutely boppin' theme. Clockwork Ruins is another highlight due mostly to its theming, a mechanical world slowly being eroded by the forces of nature. It's one of the first levels that come to mind when I think of Galaxy 2, because it embodies much of what this game's core conceit is, a constant flurry of new, interesting ideas. The first area sees you platforming across giant rotating stones that can actually get pretty tricky to maneuver around. Then, after completing another platforming challenge, you shift the gravity of the planetoid you're on, which has you contend with the obstacles in a completely new way. The walls that once pushed you off those narrow beams are now bottomless pits. Or I suppose you could just do what I do, and jump onto the outside of the box. After that, you make your way through a set of tough and thematically relevant obstacles like rolling stones, booby trap-like spikes, and secret contraptions. This level never fails to make me feel like I'm playing through an Indiana Jones temple, and I love it for that. Fluffy Bluff Galaxy caps off World 1 with a bang, as its massive scope practically begs you to experiment with the Cloudflower. This level's backing theme always ensures that I spend as much time as possible just messing around and soaking it all in. Melty Monster Galaxy's first star revolves around quickly moving lava monsters and lava waves, and the entire level has this oppressive atmosphere, due in part to the bombastic orchestral piece that accompanies this stage. You really feel the pressure mount as you get closer and closer to the end of the stage, especially on that final planetoid with all the lava monsters moving about. That pause that occurs after freeing the power star always is followed by a huge sigh of relief from me. This galaxy also features that boulder level that I mentioned earlier. It can actually be one of the more difficult levels in the game, but that constant high speed is nonetheless exhilarating. I also love how you can see this stage in the background of the Polestar area in the first stage. What a nice touch. I mentioned before that Galaxy 2 feels like a celebration of the entire series, and that is most apparent when looking at the stages. There are multiple instances where levels call back directly to past games in the series, and even more that feature indirect callbacks. Throwback Galaxy is the most obvious one. This level is pulled straight from Super Mario 64. It's identical to that game's Whomp's Fortress, save for a few changes to accommodate Mario Galaxy. I love how this level subverts your expectations by having a giant Whomp at the top of the tower, but then you jump down to the underside of the planet and fight the real King Whomp. It makes this fight feel fresh, despite having been created 15 years before this game's release. Tall Trunk Galaxy's second star consists entirely of one long, dangerous slide, and you're treated to a remix version of Super Mario 64's slide theme with instruments that fit the level's wooden theme like a glove. This was a mind-blowing level to hop into on my first playthrough, and it still remains one of my favorites in the game. Supermassive Galaxy is a revisitation of a concept appearing in both Super Mario 64 via Tiny Huge Island, and Giant Land from Mario Bros. 3. It features giant versions of classic Mario Galaxy characters, enemies, and level design tropes. The idea makes a fairly typical Mario level from a design standpoint feel completely unique. Super Mario Sunshine also gets acknowledged through Starshine Beach Galaxy. It's a wholly original level using many flourishes of Mario Sunshine, like its location, its residence, and its general vibe. It's also one of the more open-ended levels in the game, since it requires very little platforming from you. It also features one of my very favorite songs in the entire game. A perfect way to honor one of the most stylish Mario games. Throughout the campaign, there are arguably a lot of callbacks to the original Mario Galaxy, but they exist as completely unique levels. These stages are very obviously trying to recreate the feeling of playing through their corresponding stage from the first game, and they succeed to varying effects. A few that come to mind are Honey Bloom Galaxy, Cloudy Court Galaxy, and Shiver Burn Galaxy. Cloudy Court and Shiver Burn are the easiest lines to draw, as Cloudy Court has that same booming orchestra backing your journey through the level. Shiver Burn is just another variation of the fire and ice colliding idea that Freeze Flame pioneered, but that doesn't mean it isn't a great level in its own right. Honey Bloom iterates on the B-Suit levels from Galaxy 1 by just completely leaning into the course clear linear design, and it manages to feel distinct, but also familiar, which is exactly what these types of levels should strive for. Prankster Comets are another area of the level design that has been vastly improved. In the first game, these comets would just randomly appear on certain galaxies, whereas in Galaxy 2, you must collect the comet medal of a stage for them to appear. Comet medals are extra collectibles hidden throughout levels that may ask you to perform a tricky jump, keep an eye out for something that looks out of place, or otherwise require something extra from the player. They work well at keeping the first run through of a level engaging, as you'll more than likely be scouring the stage until you find it. The comets themselves are a huge upgrade from Galaxy 1 as well. For starters, The speedrun comments in the original never amounted to anything more than simply running through a level you've already played under a pretty generous timer. In Galaxy 2, you enter a level with just a couple seconds on the clock, and you've got to constantly be collecting these stopwatches to keep going. It makes these familiar stages feel incredibly tense, and they're always a ton of fun. The cosmic comets from the first game that have you race against Shadow Mario have been replaced by the clone comets, where cosmic clones are created and copy your every move. The Chompworks Galaxy one in particular is a lot of fun, because this level requires that you stand still for a bit, but the clones force you to move after a few seconds. You've got to carefully time when you stand still, and also effectively stall without taking a hit. The Puzzle Plank Comet is also great, because it forces you to balance precision with your coin collecting and speed so that you don't take damage. This level goes on for quite a while, and it's immensely rewarding to collect that final coin. Arguably the biggest change from Super Mario Galaxy 1 to 2 is the pace at which you experience new levels. The biggest galaxies in the first game would have a maximum of 6 power stars total, while in Galaxy 2, they cap out at 3. This means you spend far less time in each galaxy than you would have previously, which makes the game incredibly difficult to put down. It's one of those just one more level games. And to make the pacing even snappier, hidden stars have even been altered slightly. They're a lot less derivative on average than the ones in the original game, and some even have all new scenarios associated with them. These stars are also often found at the very beginning of levels, so they mitigate the issue that Galaxy 1 had with repetition when searching for them. These stars are far more fun to hunt for in this game as a result. There are even more stages and level design concepts I could gush about, but we'd be here all day. It could be argued that Super Mario Galaxy 2 is one of the best 3D platformers of all time, based on just its stages alone. Despite having played this game dozens of times, I'm always completely blown away by just how many creative ideas and refinements the developers managed to work into this game. The levels in Galaxy 2 are a constant barrage of new mechanic after new mechanic, new set piece after new set piece, new idea after new idea. There's no denying that these levels are a lot of fun to play through, but I can't help but feel that there was something lost in this change to approach. Sweet Mystery Galaxy is one of the only levels that utilizes the Bulb Berry, and the nature of this power-up forces the player to take on the stage at a slower pace. This stage's song is rather subdued and otherworldly, and with a combination of the detailed starry skybox, the level has this moody, laid-back atmosphere. Despite its relative simplicity, it's a stage that's always stuck out of my memory when I reflect on Galaxy 2. Cosmic Cove Galaxy is in a similar boat. Its theme, skybox, detailed environment, and level structure invite you to revel in its slower pace. It's one of the only stages in this game where collecting the Power Star is bittersweet. It means I won't be returning to it for the rest of the game. These two stages are reminiscent of what I love most about the first Galaxy game. That strong sense of atmosphere, that drive to do what has never been done before. The setting of Super Mario Galaxy was what truly elevated the game from a great Mario game to one of the most cherished in the franchise's history. Of course, Galaxy 2 still has its moments, as I just outlined, but there is a noticeable lack of unapologetically spacey levels when compared to the first game. The bulk of the stages in Galaxy 2 are set against a generic blue sky, which is far less interesting than the vast and colorful skies we saw in the first game. The blue skies homogenize all these levels in a way that I'm not a big fan of, as it feels like it strips away a lot of the character that the Galaxy subseries has going for it. Combine that with the fact that a lot of levels harken back directly and indirectly to past games in the series, and it feels like Super Mario Galaxy 2 lacks its own identity. When Super Mario Galaxy gets brought up, Space Junk Galaxy is always the first level that my mind goes to. Polestar Path is not a difficult level. The only reason it exists is to floor you with its somber atmosphere. It features an absolutely gorgeous piano piece and minimal level geometry, so that the focus is placed on soaking in the mesmerizing cosmos. As I get older and generally more patient, I find that my appreciation for moments like these in games increases. My younger self preferred the constant adrenaline rush of fresh platforming challenges, and they were memorable just because they were fun. But with my at least somewhat more developed brain, I'm able to identify themes and stages and gameplay moments I never even knew existed back then. Now that I'm a more experienced and well-rounded gamer, great level design on its own doesn't particularly stick out in my memory, because I encounter it very often. And don't get me wrong, Galaxy 2 is still leagues above most other platformers, but so is Galaxy 1, and that emotional weight gives it an edge. Starship Mario is the hub world of Super Mario Galaxy 2, and it embodies many of the philosophies behind this game's design. For starters, it streamlines traversal, both on the hub itself and when trekking between galaxies on the New World map. The Comet Observatory from Galaxy 1 was massive, and you could only access certain galaxies from their respective domes, which meant a lot of walking back and forth. In Galaxy 2, the hub is about the size of a small planetoid, which has the added benefit of making Starship Mario feel denser and livelier. Like the first game, the ship populates and expands as you progress through the game. There are lots of unique NPCs to talk to by the end, and even little minigames to play. Starship Mario also has the theme that grows alongside your progression, and it's arguably even better than the first game. Starship Mario is also home to a new character, the captain of the ship, Lubba. Although he doesn't have the same allure as Rosalina, he still makes for a decent companion character. I find him endearing in an unfunny but well-meaning uncle kind of way. When you first arrive on Starship Mario, Lubba can't help but crack a million jokes, even in light of his home literally being destroyed by meteors. At no point does this stop throughout the game, because he's much more directly involved in your adventure than Rosalina was. After completing a level, he will often have a line of dialogue for you about your mission, or whatever item or NPC you bring back with you to the ship. It keeps the adventure feeling lively and upbeat. I've always interpreted his presence as a reminder that even at your lowest points, you should appreciate the little things that keep you going, and ultimately make your life the tiniest bit more enjoyable. That discussion is probably a bit beyond the scope of this video though. The addition of a world map to Galaxy 2 has been a contentious topic. Some see it as an unnecessary restriction on player freedom, and a sign of 3D Mario moving toward linear course-clear design, while others see it as a simplification of world traversal and a smart way to control for player engagement. I happen to agree more with the latter argument. The way these maps are designed force players to play through certain levels to progress any further. This means that the developers are assured that players have been introduced to and understand specific concepts within these stages, and that allows them to iterate on them in future stages. This is why Galaxy 2 is often said to be a more challenging game. I welcome the increased challenge. I think it's one of the best approaches a sequel to a mechanically driven game can take. And for my strongest argument of all, the skybox when you're on Starship Mario changes based on which world you're in. How cool is that? Starship Mario is the hub world of Super Mario Galaxy 2, and it embodies many of the philosophies behind this game's design. It is hell-bent on just getting you into a level, leaving little reason or opportunity to just stop and smell the flowers along the way. Even if wandering the Comet Observatory was a little slow, I think there's something to be said about always having the chance to diverge from your objective and soak in the elegant atmosphere. Those long walks help to give the Comet Observatory this jaw-dropping scope, and even instill a sense of comfort within me. It's one of the few moments in the game where no enemies are trying to kill you, and you don't have to do any dangerous platforming. These little trips back and forth have come to be some of my favorite moments in Galaxy, because the game's main strength is placed on full display. Its unparalleled ability to sell you on an atmosphere. Rosalina's storybook is the thread that ties it all together. You learn about the history of the Comet Observatory, and the purpose that each and every area serves. You come to foster a strong attachment to this ship over the course of the game, which unfortunately, Starship Mario doesn't really have going for it. Look, I love my boy Lubba, but he pales in comparison to Rosalina as a companion character. I just wish the game gave me more of a reason to slow down every so often, but as it stands now, you're plopped right on the deck of the ship, with that giant yellow pad that brings you to the world map always in view. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the first game in the series to feature a legitimate post-game, and it contains quite a bit of content. After rolling credits and returning to your save, you will unlock World S, a secret world housing some of the most difficult content in the game. World S takes the idea of celebrating past Mario titles and goes even harder with it. Nearly every level here is a revisitation of an idea from Mario Galaxy 1, with there being some original levels, and even a level straight from Super Mario Sunshine. Of course, the highlight of World S is the final stage, Grand Master Galaxy. This galaxy is an incredible final send-off for the Super Mario Galaxy series. It's a test of all the knowledge you've acquired throughout these games, with each section being more difficult than the last. After grabbing the main star and collecting 9,999 star bits, you unlock one last challenge, the perfect run. This is a harder remixed version of the first star, where one tick of damage sends you back to the very beginning of the level. This mission is one of the most notorious in the entire Mario series for its difficulty. Personally, I've never found it too hard because there are a lot of little tricks you can use to make it easier. With a well-timed long jump in this cloud section, you can refill your cloud suit and bank 2 or 3 for the next area, making that section significantly easier. And for one of my favorites, you can completely trivialize this pull star section by simply falling and pulling yourself back up into the air. However you decide to tackle this stage, there is no denying the pure euphoria when collecting that final star. It's one of the most satisfying levels in the entire Mario series to complete for me. But in order to unlock this stage, you must collect every star in the game, including the new green stars. After collecting all 120 stars, green comets will shower the worlds you've explored, adding 120 more green stars to collect. These stars are found throughout levels you've previously explored, and they're often placed in hard-to-reach areas that you have to go out of your way to look for. These stars turn the most linear 3D Mario game yet into a game that encourages scouring every nook and cranny for collectibles. Most of these stars are just off the beaten path, but they can sometimes completely recontextualize certain levels. An example is the first green star in Shiverburn Galaxy. It's tucked away inside this volcano that isn't connected to any platform on the main path. I actually didn't even know you could walk on this thing until it came time to search for green stars on my first playthrough. There's also this green star in Boulder Bowl Galaxy that asks you to wall jump up this bridge you usually knock down. It's quite tricky to get on top of. And possibly one of my favorite green stars, this one in Puzzle Plank, is placed above the question block, which you would normally break, but you have to use it here to grab the star. Stars like these that ask you to platform to unconventional areas are among my favorites, but unfortunately, they are few and far between. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the first game in the series to feature a legitimate post-game, and it contains quite a bit of content. The bulk of it consists of the Green Star Comets, which are mildly interesting at best, and an absolute slog at worst. There are 120 green stars to collect, the same amount as regular stars in the game. Although they sometimes present new challenges, they mostly amount to walking through levels you've already experienced multiple times over. Each stage has 2 to 3 green stars, and collecting each one boots you out of the level. That means you have to re-enter them and play through the exact same parts of the level you just did, and then some, depending on what order you collect the stars in. Combine that with the fact that most of the levels in this game are incredibly linear, and you start to see why this portion of the game is so hated. The most egregious example is in Boss Blitz Galaxy. This stage is a boss gauntlet of bosses from Mario Galaxy, and it houses 2 green stars. The bosses in this stage are all timing based, meaning you have to wait for certain openings to attack. The first green star is on the 3rd planet out of 5, and the second green star is on the 4th planet. That means that you have to refight at least the first 2 bosses each time, and the 3rd one if you're going for the 2nd star. These stars aren't challenging to grab in the slightest. One of them is literally just sitting there out in the open. The stars in this stage feel like a massive waste of time. Slip Sand Galaxy also contains some of this game's worst green stars. There's a portion on the first stage where you move down a giant sand slide and the camera faces Mario head on. There are 2 green stars to be gotten in this section, both of which are obscured by the camera. On your first playthrough of this level, you'll slide on the sand slide and ride it like normal, and then you'll suddenly see the green stars zoom past you, unable to be reached. This means that you can only grab these stars on your first try if you know exactly where they're located already. If not, you'll be replaying the level again to get back to the slide, as if they weren't already tedious enough. And that's not even the worst part. I mentioned that collecting each green star boots you out of the level, but forcing you to replay part of a level you've already played through multiple times is only the half of it. Once you collect a star, you have to watch this nice little animation of Mario or Luigi celebrating and congratulating you on your monumental achievement. Then you fly back to Starship Mario, watch the star fly up into the air, and the game shows you your star total, a crown if you completed the galaxy, your starbit total, how many coins you collected, and then the game will save. And then you have to go to the helm of the ship, traverse the world map, and fly to the next galaxy. Yes, it's as tedious as it sounds. This is an issue throughout the entire game, but it's worse in this part because of how quickly you're collecting these green stars. The wonderful pacing that makes this game's first half so enjoyable is completely discarded in the second half. The green star's mission to fundamentally change how you engage with these levels sounds great on paper, but they are restrained by the rigid framework of Galaxy 2, and in execution, leave a lot to be desired. So those are my thoughts on Super Mario Galaxy 2. They may have been a little messy, incoherent, or even contradictory at times, but I think this video contains just about every opinion I have on this game that I feel strongly about. This whole ordeal has left me very confused. Everything that I think makes this game great also comes with a massive caveat. Throughout my time writing this video, I came to a realization. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is not trying to be its own thing. I mean, it's quite literally in the title. And for that, I'm okay with its existence, but I can no longer consider it one of the most compelling offerings of the Mario series. I think Galaxy 2 achieved what it set out to do, which was to streamline and expand on Super Mario Galaxy. However, the ways in which it did so were simultaneously beneficial and detrimental to the overall experience for me. A greater focus on interesting levels and gimmicks meant neglecting the moodiness and atmospheric flourishes that solidified the original game as one of the best games ever made. It's funny then, that despite Galaxy 2's mission, it has a very different appeal than the first game. If I want to play through a game with the fast pace and magnificently crafted levels, I'll boot up Galaxy 2. If I want to play through a game that feels daring, like a true innovation, with an unforgettable and wholly unique vibe, a game that stands as the pinnacle of its genre, a game that is greater than the sum of its parts, I'll play Super Mario Galaxy. And now, for a brand new segment. A big thanks to the wonderful folks who have pledged to me on Patreon. I specifically want to thank Earthquaker Oats and Tink for signing up for the supporter tier, and also for just being generally awesome. If you would like to appear in the credits of my future videos, or gain access to other perks, check out the link in the description. That's it from me. Thanks for watching.